See you, Quinn. Thanks for helping me out.
All right, Connor, I'll see you. Oh, hey, your shoe's untied.
Oh, drats. Ow! Oh! Eek. You guys help with back pain?
All right, so if we wanted to start training someone on improving their posterior chain, one of the first exercises we would start with is the Jefferson curl. So Connor, let's go ahead and set up for the Jefferson curl here. Now, before he starts, you'll see there's obviously the stack of weights here. This is there specifically for a way to measure the range. So a lot of people tend to be pretty tight with their hamstrings. And so this is going to stop the weights from going past the point that you can maintain perfect form. Now, perfect form on the Jefferson curl looks like his head is curled. He's rounding the back one vertebrae at a time. The legs stay perfectly straight. And he's trying to increase the range of motion. This movement is training his hamstrings in the lengthened position and also training the spinal erectors, the muscles that go up the back, to contract through the rounded position. So once he gets pretty good here, we're able to see that he has perfect form. We would simply progress it by removing one of the weights. So here, he's going to have roughly about an inch and a half more range that he has to work through. And this way, someone has a very progressive way to measure how they're improving on the Jefferson curl. The goal would be eventually to get to the point where you could do it off the floor. I'm not entirely sure what Connor's perfect range would be, but seeing that he's getting this range comfortably, we would just simply continue to lower, making sure that perfect form. Now I can start telling that his hamstrings are starting to reach that stretching point because I can see the tension get on as he reaches down. So probably a good point to stay would be around here, and then he'd be able to progress it either in weight or until this gets comfortable, at which point we would then lower the weight yet again. All right, so with the Jefferson curl, if you saw his rounded position, we're training the back in the flexed position. The next exercise we would use to train the posterior chain is going to be the seated good morning. This is an exercise that's going to train the back in the opposite position or in the extended position. So we're going to use a bench. We have some dumbbells here because he could just easily drop them if he gets into a position that he's not super comfortable in. Before we start, he's going to lift up his chest, retract the upper back muscles, and arch hard on the base of his lower spine. Now, maintaining that position, he's going to try to make contact with the bench. We could see that his back is still maintaining the arch. Make sure you also activate your glutes by spreading the legs apart. That will allow the hips to rotate easier and maintain a nice upright position. Now, by training the back in the extended position, we are stimulating the back in many different positions that it's going to get to when doing an athletic motion. Whether you're running, you're playing basketball, football, whatever the situation may be, being strong with the back in the various positions it could find itself in is very important so that it can better take on stress when doing those athletic movements. So once he gets to a good point here, the way to progress this would be to be lowering the incline. So here we're just adding a couple more degrees of motion, and he's going to have to work a little bit harder to reach the bottom. Now the goal here is to be able to make contact with the lower abdomen or your belly button and keeping the chest off. That's going to really force you to maintain a nice upright position. He'll continue here. We can see he's maintaining beautiful form here. So I'm going to go ahead and progress him even further. Now we're getting into the lower ranges of motion, and depending on the athlete, they may have to spend some time at a given angle so that they can maintain proper back positioning. Here we can see his back is starting to get challenged to maintain its extension. So if Connor were my client, I would spend some time here and really encourage him to retract that upper back. That's right, and just work there. The weight will help to pull him further down while he maintains this upright position. But with this movement, you're going to be stimulating the back and getting it stronger in the extended position. So once we finish with the seated good morning, the next movement we would want to progress to is the RDL. Now the RDL is going to be strengthening the back the same way the seated good morning is, but it's going to allow us to safely, progressively overload the movement without running into any sticky situations. Because the seated good morning, you could argue that you could do it with a barbell, but if you fail with a barbell on a seated good morning, it's very scary. So it's much better to just progress onto a movement that stimulates the back in the extended position, but you're still in a much safer place, which in this case, it's going to be the Romanian deadlift. Now, as we see in the RDL, he's maintaining the same position of the back as he was doing in the seated good morning. The only difference is that the weights are now underneath him, and he's able to drop the bar if he ever gets into a sticky situation, which means he could safely go ahead and put on, 25 pounds, 45 pounds, and progress that way without being at actual risk. Now, ideally, you would want to increase the range, but you'd never want to increase range where you start to lose the low back position. So you want to keep an eye on the lower back as he gets down, and right here, if he goes any lower past that point and that low back starts to flex, that's where all that shear force starts to get to the lower spine, and it could cause some injury into the spinal erectors or just the discs themselves of the spine. So as he continues, he'll go ahead and get stronger. We can go ahead and progress with more weights, and this would just be the next movement we would progress from the seated good morning. So we've already done 2 exercises that cover the back in the extended position. We're now going to go back to training the back in the flex position, because having worked through the Jefferson curl, then the seated good morning, and then the RDL, you've already spent some time training the back. So now we can go ahead and start progressing through training the back in the flex position with load. It's always a good idea to have a nice baseline level of strength before trying to do things that could be possibly injurious if you're not doing it in a very gradual, progressive manner. So here, the back extension is easily one of the safest exercises to be able to train the back in a flex position, because you can just do it body weight. Here, he's going to be going all the way down. He's going to flex his back. He's going to reach towards that bar down here. Legs are staying nice and straight. He's getting a good stretch to the hamstrings. Glutes are getting activated. Back is coming out of the rounded position. Now, let's say Connor didn't have the ability to do that. He could place his hands on the handlebars here and assist himself and work whatever range of motion he could work through without any discomfort. We do have people sometimes just hold the top position, and that's enough of a stimulus to kind of get the ball rolling. But once you get good there, you can start working more range, using the handlebars to control yourself down and help yourself up, and eventually letting it go so that the back could do all of the work. Now, as we see here, we have some dumbbells on the floor. You will eventually get to the point where you could do this loaded. And this exercise is very safe to load, because if he gets into a sticky situation, just puts them down on the floor. But let's go ahead and continue on here. As we can see here, he has some weight. He could go ahead and progressively overload that, start getting to 10 kilos, up to 20 kilos, and start getting really strong in this position. By progressing all of these movements, the Jefferson curl, seated good morning, RDL, and back extension, you are going to be providing just excellent stimulus to train the entire posterior chain. The hamstrings are getting stretched and flexed. The glutes are engaging as he's getting up from the bottom on all of these movements, and the spinal erectors are getting a chance to really contract through the bottom position and get stronger in those movements. Where'd Connor go?
Bathroom break.
Makes sense. All right, so we're going to carry on with Drew here. Now, a posterior chain video would not be complete if we don't train the entire posterior chain, which is going to include the hamstrings. Here we've got the Nordic, and the Nordic is going to be supplying a very strong stimulus to the hamstrings and getting strong, flexing the leg. So we can see that from the bottom position, his legs are straight, and from that point, he's going to flex his hamstrings and pull himself back up. This movement is really good to stimulate the very back connective tissues of his leg. So it's going to stimulate things like the ACL, the hamstring tendons, and also the calves get a great workout on this as well, because they do try to contribute to the lift. So they're also engaging. The Nordic curl has been shown in different studies to be able to help reduce the likelihood of injuries. And it's because it is providing a stress as he goes down. The legs are getting pried apart, but you as the individual are trying to resist that, which is something that occurs very often when you're running. And that action of when you strike the ground and extending through, that's usually where people are going to have some sort of an ACL tear. So this exercise not only gets the hamstrings trained, It does also stimulate the back and the hamstrings and calves, and it's going to complete the entire bulletproofing of the posterior chain, which is why it made it into this video.
Marcel, thank you so much for taking us through that ultimate posterior chain video. In fact, we have some really awesome videos coming up in these next couple of weeks. And as always, the reason we do make these videos is so that you can get educated as well as become a member on our app. And as I always mention, you can get signed up at atgonlinecoaching.com. You can also book a free consultation call with Connor, who was featured in the video, and Marley, who was featured in the past videos. The schedule for the calls is filling up extremely fast. So please make sure you go check out a date, find a time that works for you, and book a call. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you the next week.